Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Ocean Wave Lighthouse, and I'm sipping on some raspberry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you can find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, deep yellow, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, Mars black, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue. And of course you can switch those up, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'm going to be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 bright synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up if you like, but that's what I'll be using. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are white, blue, black, and burnt sienna. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom bluish gray color that I'll be using for the majority of the sky. And then as I come down towards the bottom of the canvas, I'm going to be giving it a little bit of a gradient with my burnt sienna so I can have a nice atmospheric dimension in that background. So I have pre-mixed my custom bluish gray right here so you can see where I'm headed. How I got to that was I used a bunch of my white, and I used a good amount of blue as well, maybe about half the amount of blue to white, and then a little bit of black as well. And then I just started mixing them together. Yours might end up being a little bit lighter or a little bit bluer or a little bit darker than mine, but whatever it comes out, you can adjust it after you've started the mixing process. So if it was too blue, you can add a little bit more black and white. If it was too gray, you could, or too dark, you could add a little bit more blue and white. So you can just kind of adjust it to whatever your visual preference is. And it may end up, after it dries, a little bit darker. So just kind of visually plan for that as you are creating your mixture. So once you've got that bluish gray, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top of my canvas, and I'm just going to be applying it in a left to right type of brush stroke throughout the entire area. I'm going to just kind of keep coming down, and I'm going to bring this down about halfway before I start introducing additional colors to it for my gradient. So this way I've got this really nice kind of stormy type of sky color in my background, which is what I perceive to be big, huge, wicked waves being around or created by stormy kind of weather. So I am going to be, that's why I'm choosing to do this kind of color. So once I'm almost about halfway down in through here. So now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of burnt sienna with my blue gray, my custom bluish gray. So this is going to start a transition down into what I'm going to have a little bit lighter of a background, or a little bit kind of warmer of a background down towards the where the wave is going to be. So now I'm going to start picking up a little bit more of my burnt sienna. So this is going to incorporate right in with that bluish gray and give it a little bit different of a hue. So you can go any combination of both of that bluish gray and your burnt sienna just to get this nice transition going down in through here. And I'm going to use about equal parts of both of them for a little while here, so I can just bring it down towards the bottom. My wave is gonna really take up a lot of the bottom portion of the canvas, so I'm not terribly concerned about my, from about here down, about that being any perfect color, because it's really just the background noise for my wave itself. So I don't need it to have a perfect lightness or darkness or an exact amount of the burnt sienna in it. It's really just acting as the background color for it. I think I'm going to actually maybe add a touch more. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white with my burnt sienna just so I can get a little bit lighter of the background to be just a touch lighter down at the bottom here before it's going to meet that wave. So this is burnt sienna with a little bit of white on my dirty brush. So I do have some of that gray mixture still on my brush. And then once I get it about this far down, now it kind of doesn't really matter what I paint it with. So I think I'm going to use all three colors, my burnt sienna, white, and gray, just to get myself down to the bottom. Again, doesn't really matter what tone this is, like down in this bottom quarter of the canvas, because it's just going to act as the background. And then once you've got this entire background done, you could certainly, if you wanted to, do another layer. You could let it dry and see if there's anything more that you want to do to it. But we are going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, and again, just kind of get the whole thing done, you could even paint around the edges of your canvas if you felt that you wanted to have a nice complete look to your project. You could certainly wrap that color around the edges and that'll make it look nice and finished. And then you can put this large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna be drawing an outline for our lighthouse, the rock, and the sea. So I'm gonna be using my piece of chalk. You could certainly use any kind of drawing utensil that you'd like, but I'm gonna be using some chalk. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers. We're going to connect those markers, and hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have a lighthouse that's standing straight up, sitting on top of a rock with a little ocean in the background, or sea. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a couple of markers that are going to prevent me from making my lighthouse look like it's falling over, and then I'm going to connect those markers. So I'm going to find myself about the bottom, about halfway at the bottom of my canvas. So that's about right about here for me. I'm going to come up about 3 inches and then over maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch or so. So that's going to be about my first marker. I'm going to come over to the left of that about 2 inches. And if you want to make sure that these two are the same height away from the bottom of your canvas, you can always use your brush as kind of a measuring tool, see how high that one is, and just make sure that one is equal height from the bottom of the canvas. Then what you can do is just eyeball, kind of split the difference between these two, give yourself a little bit of a marker, and then I'm going to be using my medium brush as a measuring tool, but you could certainly use anything you would like as a measuring tool. I like to use the things on hand, and they always seem to be paintbrushes for me, so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to see how far away from the edge of my canvas this center dot is. So I just kind of hold my brush up like that, and I kind of hold it at the edge over here, and then I can just take it and slide it right up, and then however far up I want it to, I'm going to be maybe about, I don't know, that's probably about 4 inches away from the top of my canvas, 4 to 5 inches. I'm going to make myself a marker at that distance. So it's of equal distance away from the edge of my canvas. This is going to ensure that my lighthouse doesn't fall over because it's going to be nice and straight. So if this was 2 inches, that's about 1 inch, and this is about 1 inch. So then I can just go away from this center mark a little bit less than 1 inch. So maybe I go about 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch away on either side. So something along that line. Now I'm just going to connect my dots. So I can connect these 3 up here. I can connect these 3 down in through here. And then I'm going to connect here to here and here to here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I like to keep my eye on the prize, which is the subsequent marker or that bottom dot. But if it's not perfect, that's why we're using chalk or a drawing utensil that you can kind of erase or modify. Plus, we're going to be doing a whole lot of painting on top of this, so if it's not perfectly straight, that's okay. And then once I've got that done, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a rock down at the bottom of it. So I'm just going to take it out from this right-hand corner and just give myself a real kind of fun, jaggedy type of line that's going to represent some kind of rock formation underneath it. I then am going to take from this corner and cut off, do another kind of ripply line, because I want my rock to be kind of separate from the big wave. I want the wave to look like it's crashing over. So I'm just going to take from this left-hand corner and give myself kind of just a ripply type of line in through. Actually, let me just bring this all the way over to this corner in through here. So that'll give us a stopping point. We'll know that this is the rock, and then the rest is going to be the wave that's going to be crashing into it. Then I'm going to make a little sliver of water area over here. So I'm at almost about the same height as the bottom of my lighthouse. And I'm almost about, if this is about halfway between here and the edge of my canvas, I'm a little bit to the left of that. So somewhere in through here. I'm going to give myself a wavy kind of line in through here, which is going to represent our ocean that's in motion. And then I'm just going to give myself this little kind of cut off area in through here, and this is going to represent our ocean that's got lots of motion to it. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, make any adjustments that you need to, put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for the lighthouse and the rock. And we're also going to be finishing this little sliver of sea over in through here. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, blue, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting these 2 sections with just brown. And then this one over here, I'll be using blue, brown, and white. So I've got my medium brush. I'm going to load it with brown paint. I'm going to do my lighthouse first. And I'm going to be using a vertical brush stroke for this, except for where maybe it meets this little tippy top. I got to go left to right to catch that. And then when I go down the side, you can certainly use it in this flat way like this, but these bright brushes are great for giving you some nice kind of clean lines around the edges, so you can kind of just work it with using the side of the brush like this, following right along your chalk mark. And if your chalk mark is still evident after this step, that's okay. Again, we've got lots of highlights and shadows and stuff to go on this, so I'm just working towards getting it towards that edge, and then I'll go ahead and do it over on this side as well. And you can always just brace yourself on your canvas with your hand. Like when I'm doing something like this, I tend to rest my hand on the canvas itself, so you can find whatever method works best for you for getting these straighter lines. You may like using a different brush for this. I like to use all different kinds of brushes to get straight lines, so you can use whatever one works best for you. We're just demonstrating with this one today. And then when I go down here for my rock, I'm going to be using a more chaotic type of brush stroke, because I like the brown has transparency to it, so you can see the brush marks, and this is going to help me to kind of establish some texture within this rock, just kind of right out of the gate. So I've got my brown paint, and I'm just kind of jabbing it in, maybe spinning my brush around a little bit. This is going to give me some nice light spots and dark spots. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to kind of wipe it off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue as well. So right now I have brown and blue on my brush for this little piece of sea in through here, and I want it to look like there's some motion. So I'm going to be using these kind of curved vertical or horizontal lines to give myself a little bit of motion in through here. And I'm picking up a little bit more blue so we can have a little bit more blue represented in here. And then once I've got some good kind of waves, ripply waves kind of happening in through here, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. Oops, you can't, that was so little you couldn't even see it. There we go, we got a tiny bit right there. And then I'm just going to add a couple of little white caps. So really all I'm doing is looking to tell the story of this really, you know, wild and motionful water off in the distance that's going to be creating this big old wave. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our the same brush, the medium brush, for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the highlights and shadows on the building part of the lighthouse. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, rust, yellow, and white. And what I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to be creating the contour of this building. I want it to be nice and dark along the edges. I'm going to have it nice and light kind of in the center to create this roundness to it. I'll have it a little bit darker up at the top because I feel that the top part of the lighthouse might be casting a shadow on the top part of the building itself, like where that balcony part is. So I may be a little bit darker up and through here, but it'll be nice and light down through the center here. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to start it with a bit of black and brown on my brush to give myself these really dark kind of shadows along the edges of the lighthouse, maybe more on the right hand side. And then as I work my way towards the center of the lighthouse, I'm going to be getting it to be lighter and lighter. So I'm going to start with brown and a touch of black on my brush at the same time. So I'm going to kind of push it towards the edge over here on the right hand side. So I'm going to take my brush, let me just move my body a little bit so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better here. And I'm going to take it right down this edge in through here. So I like to kind of come in with my brush at a good angle to give me kind of a firm edge where I want it, and then a soft edge where I want the soft edge, which is going to be on the building itself. So again, just black and brown on my brush, and I'm kind of pushing the darkness towards the edge of the building like that. And of course you can certainly modify it. That one went a little bit too far out on me, which is totally fine. And then I'm just going to kind of rub it up and down to get that blend within the lighthouse itself. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown, more brown on my brush. I did not wash my brush. I'm just going to kind of get this top area to be a little bit darker. So I had the remnants of the black on my brush, and now I added more brown to it. So that way I got that little bit of darkness up at the top that I was looking for. And I'm going to do some down this left-hand side. So brown with a touch of black is going back on my brush to get this left-hand side. And you may find, depending on, you know, the angle that you're painting at, you might like, you know, maybe you turn your canvas upside down so you approach each side the same way with your hand. Sometimes it's difficult to go from one side to the next doing the same, like I went from this way and then this way with my hand. So if your hand doesn't work both ways, you can flip your canvas upside down and kind of tackle it with the same, coming in at the same angle with your hand. And then I would just take this and just blend it in, make sure that it kind of blended in with that original brown that I had on there. And now what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna. So I have a little bit of burnt sienna. I want to give this a little bit different of a tone, so it's not just brown and black. So a little bit of burnt sienna is going to help me accomplish that. I'm picking up a little bit more brown on my brush right now to, without washing my brush, just to make sure I have a full coverage on here. And I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush, so it's drying pretty fast, which is what's allowing me to kind of add these layers on top of layers. I think I want a little bit more burnt sienna down this right hand side to give me a little bit more of a glow of sorts, going towards that lighter part on the what I'm going to put on the lighter part of the highlight. So this is working out pretty well for me, and I'm using these long vertical continuous strokes in order to get it to blend pretty well. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tackling where I want that highlight, maybe in a second. I just picked up a little bit more brown to get this to blend just a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to add a highlight on here. So my highlight is going to be predominantly yellow and white, but very little bit of paint. So if your paint is really still very wet right now, you might want to wait a minute to get this a little bit drier. I'm going to use a little bit, very little bit of paint so I can kind of get it on there without worrying. Mine's almost dry now, but if yours is really thick and still wet, you might want to wait a minute to do this. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white and a tiny bit of yellow, like really just a tiny bit on the tip of my brush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start where I feel that the lighthouse would pop out to me the most. So I'm going to have it somewhere in through here. So I'm going to use this continual brush stroke. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to my brush to get this to spread out a little bit. So when you add a tiny bit of water to your brush, the paint will appear to be lighter than it really is. When it dries, it will get darker. That water makes it appear, the water on your bristles make that paint appear a little bit brighter when it's on top of the darkness. So just be prepared. It might look a little foggy in essence when it's wet, but then once it dries, it'll turn out fine. And then I just kind of lightly, I'm not pushing hard, I'm just kind of lightly blending this in. And then I would let it dry, and if there was any additional blending that I felt was necessary, I certainly would do that. And then we are going to be using this same medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry the medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our rock. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, I might not use brown, but black, burnt sienna, yellow, and white are definitely colors I'll be using. So I'm not looking to do any fine-tuned detail here. I just really want to give it some good texture to make it really resemble some kind of, you know, oceanside rock that's been beat up over time. So I'm just going to go for some colors and textures here. So I've got my medium brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black paint right on the end of my brush. I'm going to give myself some really nice dark sections in through here. I'm not going to be doing anything other than kind of wiggling my brush to give myself these dark areas within the rock. So I'm thinking that these are going to have a lot of texture to it. This is going to be a wave crashing in. I've got some dark stuff down, maybe by the bottom of my lighthouse in through here. It's looking pretty good, maybe a little bit more in through here. And you could certainly use a smaller brush if you wanted yours to have more defined detail to it, but that's looking pretty good. It kind of looks like a ledge here and then maybe another rock in through here because I put some dark stuff in through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush because I don't want the black to take over, which it very easily could. So I just washed and dried my brush. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit of burnt sienna or rust on my brush. And I'm going to just kind of add little pockets of this rich kind of tone, maybe bring some down these sides, maybe a little bit over in through here. I'm intermingling it with the brown. You could certainly intermingle it with the black as well. That's looking pretty good. I don't need to overdo these colors, so I'm just going to put a little bit here and there. Now I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a bit of yellow now, and so the yellow is going to kind of add another rich tone to this, and I'm just going to kind of dabble it in here and there, not overdoing it. I'm going to wipe my brush off again. I'm going to pick up some brown just to make sure that I've got all of these little pockets or areas fully painted. So just, I felt like there was a couple of spots that didn't look fully painted. And now without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint just at the tip of my brush and through here, and I'm just going to give myself the couple of little lighter spots. This light paint on your brush can help to identify a little ledge or edge of the rock. So if I wanted a little edge to show up, I could just kind of get that to be a bit brighter, or this top area to be a bit brighter, and that'll explain to the viewer that that top part has, you know, a little bit more light hitting it. And that's looking pretty good to me. I don't really want to do anything more, so that's going to do it for me. I'm going to be using my large brush for the next step, so you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the first layer to our big wave. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, white, burnt sienna, and maybe a little bit of blue, or my sky gray that I used. So what I'm in essence going to do, or maybe a little bit of brown, I'll call out the colors as I use them. So what I'm in essence going to do, I want to put my wave in motion right now and kind of give myself a footprint as to how big I want this thing to be. I do want it to really look like it's crashing and has a lot of dimension to it, so I don't want to start too light too fast. So I'm going to actually be doing a grayish tone for the wave itself, and I'm going to be incorporating some darkness, especially down at the bottom or along the edges of my wave, where I really want it to look like it's got some depth to it. So I've got my large bristle brush. I'm going to pre-mix myself we'll call it our wave gray, and then we'll start building the wave around it. So I've already pre-mixed mine, and I'll show you how I got there. So this is the gray that I'm going for. This was my sky gray. This is going to be my wave gray. So this does not have any blue in it. What I did was I used a little bit of white, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of black. So I'm going for more of a warm type of gray color as opposed to a cool gray, which is what we created with that blue. So now that I've got that, I can utilize this to kind of give myself my kind of footprint for the wave itself. So I know that I've got a lot of wave down in through here. I'm going to have it kind of crashing to the back of my lighthouse. It's going to be billowing out over here, up in through here, and then over on this side it's going to kind of come out and kind of crash around. So I've got a lot of wave. So I've got my gray on here right now. What I really am going to do is just kind of lightly give myself a little bit of a footprint. I know that I want it here already, so I'm just going to bring it right up to that ocean in through there. I don't need to color it 100% right now. I'm just kind of giving myself the information as to where I want it. I'm going to just go down in through here. Again, I don't need to paint everything 100%. I am going to have it kind of crashing over my lighthouse, but again, not terribly concerned at this point to give it 100% accuracy. I'm just kind of playing with where I want it. So I'm going to have it billowing out there. I definitely want it to come a little bit above my lighthouse too. So just going to kind of give myself this, I think of it kind of like clouds at this point, just giving myself a footprint where I want it to go and how I want it to kind of be forming around my lighthouse. So something like that. It's going to kind of come out in through here. So again, just kind of giving myself a little bit of information so I don't get lost and I have something to follow. Over on this right hand side, this is going to be all the way up in through here. I'm going to have it pretty darn dark in through here, but again, I want to kind of give myself this outside footprint for it. So maybe we're going to come up in through here, bring this in through here, and I haven't even reloaded my brush. I want this to really, especially along these edges, look nice and airy and have lots of visibility to the background behind it in certain areas, especially just around those edges. This is going to kind of come down in through here and back up, maybe a little bit up in through here. And then now that I've kind of got that exterior footprint, I can start adding in little bits of darkness at this point to give myself the depth of the wave itself. And then on our second pass, we'll be adding a lot of lightness. While I still have just a little bit of this remnants on my brush, I'm going to start pulling this also over my my lighthouse in through here. when I'm doing stuff like this, I use the benefits of my brush, especially when I'm running out of paint, to give myself these airy type of see-through effects. So you can do the same thing on your part. So that's gonna work out pretty well for me to start that. And now that I've got that, I'm gonna pick up some blue and brown. So I'm picking up blue and brown on my dirty brush. What this is gonna create is a similar tone to what we have over here. And I can start putting the wave type of motion in place with these dark areas and giving myself some deep darkness throughout. So maybe I'll put some darkness in through here. I've got some over in through here, maybe down at this bottom we've got a little bit of darkness. I'm picking up a bit more browns, so, and my dark or my wave gray, so I can get a little bit more darkness down in through here. I feel like I would have some deep darker tones down in through here. And now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black, brown, and blue on my dirty brush because I really want to get some darkness down over here. So tiny bit of black, brown, and blue. And again, hardly any, because I'm using this scrubbing type of technique, which is going to allow me to kind of rub it out, give it these soft edges to it, which is going to be reminiscent of what the wave is going to do as it's crashing. I want some darkness in through here, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown on my dirty brush. So I just picked up a little bit of brown on my dirty brush. I'm just going to scoot this in through here right next to the edge of my lighthouse. And you might find that as you're doing this that you want yours to go even darker than what I've got. And if that's the case, then feel free, make it dark. I just picked up a tiny bit more black and brown on my brush because I feel like I want it just a little bit more dark coming in through here. And you know, the deep darkness is what's going to give it that depth into it. I think I want some darkness over in through here too. So while I've got that darkness, maybe a little bit more blue. So I'm kind of flipping back and forth between black, blue, and brown at this point to give myself these dark areas within the wave. So black, blue, and brown are going to give me these darker tones within it. So maybe a little bit more in through here. I really just want that inside behind that lighthouse to look like it's the deepest, darkest. And then I can just kind of rub this out, giving myself, and I'm kind of doing some of it in a directional type of way in order to give the illusion of that water kind of just splashing in its way. And when you're around that lighthouse, if you do go over your edges of the lighthouse so much so that it no longer looks like the edge of the lighthouse, you can certainly go back and correct that or just touch it up with your lighthouse colors. This is looking pretty good. I think I'm going to pull a little bit more, whatever's on my brush right now, just give myself, I think I want a little bit more darkness up here. So again, just a little bit of that black, brown, and blue to get this up in through here. And then add maybe a couple little pockets of this darkness in through here. And then as I'm going over towards this right side, I feel like I'm going to have that be a little bit lighter with some bit of sun on that, but I still want these little dark pockets throughout here. So I'm just making sure, and I'm proceeding cautiously. Some black, brown, and the blue again are just kind of these darker shades that I'm putting on here now. And then over in through here, maybe as this wave kind of crashes over here, maybe we've got some darkness over here. So this is where I'm going to pick up maybe brown with a little bit of burnt sienna on my brush to get some of these background colors to just kind of intermingle, and maybe there's some, you know, reflections of stuff coming off of these waves in through here, but I'm still going to kind of get it a little bit darker. I mean, the beautiful thing about water is it's going to be reflecting everything that's around it. So it could be having reflections of the building. It could be having reflections of other rocks. So just explore the color patterns. I'm going back to black, blue, and brown right now, just a little bit on my brush. And again, I haven't washed my brush, and I wipe it off on my paper towel if I feel like I've got too much or too little, and you just kind of keep tweaking with those dark areas. You can see the wave is starting to form. I've got lighter areas in through here. Around this edge is where they're going to be bright I'm going to have it kind of crashing over in this direction over here. So I'm adding those darker notes in through there. Maybe I'll pull it over in through here just a little bit more. Maybe it comes up here. And again, I'm just kind of right now giving all the motion I want to it, and then I will let it dry, and then when we come back on the second pass, that's when we'll add all of the effervescent kind of bright splashes on top of it. But you need these dark tones underneath it in order to give it that depth to it. Maybe just a little bit darker over here. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your dark tones within your wave, and again, utilize any of those brown, burnt sienna, black, rust to get those colors on there. Maybe just a little bit of the burnt sienna is going on my brush now to carry some of these colors over on this side, and then I'll let it dry. If there's any little fiddling I want to do after this, I certainly will, but my next brush is going to be this large one, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our wave. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I'm going to use a whole bunch of colors. Definitely white is going to be in the equation, but I'm also going to be using probably some of my wave gray, maybe some of my sky gray, yellow, burnt sienna, and definitely some white. And if I feel I need to or want to go into any of those other dark tones or notes, I certainly will do that. So the biggest trick for me when I'm doing something like this, clouds, waves, things of that nature, where I want to build a lot of dimension in a white, seemingly white object, is I never use straight white until the end. So I'm going to build my way towards the lightness. So right now I've got a great starting point for my wave. Now the next thing I'm going to do is start building my way towards the very white caps, or the white foamy, you know, final splashes that are going to bring it really to life. So again, I'm not going to use a lot of paint, but I don't want to just use white right now. So you can use any combination of your wave gray plus white, your sky gray plus white. I've also pre-mixed myself this little creamy color. So what this is, it's white plus a tiny bit of yellow and a tiny bit of burnt sienna. So this in essence is kind of like an off-white type of a color. So you can utilize this to help build your way to the lightness without going too white too soon. So this kind of helps build your way. So I'm gonna start with just a little bit of this on my brush. So I know that I just mixed my color, so I probably was overloaded, but so I just kind of wiped it off on my paper towel, and then I'm gonna start building my way towards the lightness. So I've got my wave in place. Now I'm gonna kind of find these lighter pockets where I want it to start to emerge, maybe giving these areas that were seemingly kind of flat because we didn't really paint them much. This lighter tone is gonna help work our way towards that vibrancy. And if it's too light, if you feel it's too light, what you can do is you can always get it to be a little bit darker, or you can even just pick up a little bit of like your background sky blue, so that's, or sky gray. So that's what I did. I just picked up some of my background color, and this way it's going to give me this bit of a different color to it, but it's going to be still on that light region. So you can play with any of these light tones that you want, but the key is always to have very little paint on your brush. So I felt like I had too much paint on my brush there, so I just kind of wiped it off, and I'm watching my trajectory of that wave. So I've had these kind of the edge of the wave in through here. I've got these kind of lighter marks giving myself a little bit of the direction in through there, and I'm not going to overpaint and get rid of all of those dark areas. So this is just kind of allowing me to, again, build my way towards that super light part and without overdoing it. So again, right now I've got kind of my sky gray plus white and a little bit of that tan type of beige color that we created. And I'm just kind of building my way, making sure I don't overdo it, giving myself these more full areas of the waves where they're gonna have more volume to them. And then maybe I'll give this a little wave in through here, a little fluffiness up in through here. And then as I work my way towards this top area, I'm gonna get that to go a little bit lighter in a bit, but first I wanna finish up on this quest that I'm on. So I'm gonna bring this thought process over to the right hand side as well, and going from one side to the next, maybe one side has a little bit more hues of blue in it, and maybe the other side has a little bit more of the yellow in it, so, or a yellowy kind of warm tone. So you can certainly play with one side being a little bit cooler than the other, just to tell the story of maybe where the light source might be. So that you can certainly have happen. One side can be darker, one side can be lighter, one side could be a little bit warmer, one side could be a little bit cooler. That would absolutely happen in this type of stormy kind of atmosphere. But right now, as I'm building this, I'm using that lighter tone on my brush, and I'm kind of using a dotting type of rubbing technique. I think I want a little bit more of my that beigey color in through here. Maybe get this a little bit deeper in through here with a little bit more sunshiny kind of tone to it, or a little bit more of that yellowy kind of tone to it. There we go, that's working for me. And then I'm gonna bring a little bit of this up in through here, and then I'm just gonna kind of swirl this up here like it's really got a lot of energy in through here. And then right along this edge of the building, I'm gonna get this to go pretty light like this. I think I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of burnt sienna and yellow on my dirty brush just to give myself a little bit more, I don't necessarily wanna say color in here, but a little bit more warmth to the tone of the water back in through here. Again, that's gonna make it look like it's got a little bit more light hitting it as it's reaching the top of that lighthouse, and maybe it's closer to the sunshine that hopefully will be emerging pretty soon. This seems like a pretty stormy moment in time, so hopefully there's some sunshine going to be popping its head up into here sometime soon. So that's looking pretty good. Oh, I'm digging that color. Maybe I'm going to bring some of that down in through here. That little mixture I had on my brush, I'm feeling like I want it to kind of slide in over on these parts of these waves over in through here. So that's looking pretty good to me. So now I'm going to start picking up a tiny bit of white plus my light color that I had made, that tan color. So there's white on my brush now, and very little bit, and I'm going to start kind of intermingling this and giving myself these brighter areas. But again, I'm not overdoing it. I don't want my white to take over. I just want it to start to finish these brighter aspects of the wave. So even though I'm kind of on that spot where I want to put that final energy into the wave, I don't need it to be all super duper white. You can have these kind of softer white notes, and then maybe up in through here's where I add a bunch more white. Maybe this is where I have the brightest of the energy kind of coming in through here or over in through here. So you can make the wave look like it's popping out even more in certain areas by just enhancing the vibrancy to that part of the wave, the brightness of it. And that'll make it have that more energy. So even in through here, if I felt like I wanted a little bit more, just add it in, but without overdoing it. That's the key, is to just not overdo it. So that's some good energy over in through here. So I want to bring in some more energy over on this right hand side too, but again, I don't want to overdo it. So where do I want the most power? It looks like I want the most power in through here, so that's where I'm going to use the most white on my brush. So I've got white on my brush now, and I keep dabbing it off on my paper towel because I just don't want it to overpower my wave. I want to build my way, and I'm just kind of dotting it, and it just can easily go too white too fast, and that will take away from all of the efforts that I put into building the dimension to it. So I just go slowly as I'm making my way. Maybe this kind of gives me a little shot of brightness showing where that movement is, and then just kind of bringing this in through here. I do want this kind of brightness at the top to kind of carry behind here, as if there's, you know, again, that lightness that's coming from somewhere, and then I can just kind of rub out whatever is left on my brush. And then again, I would definitely, after I feel that I've got the majority of this the way that I want, I would let it dry, and then if there's any additional bits I want to put in, like I might come back and put a little bit more brightness in some of these, but I really kind of want to wait for it to dry to see if I have given it all of the energy that I want. I think maybe a little bit more in through here. As I'm speaking, I'm like, maybe a little bit more here, a little bit more there, but it's looking pretty good from this side angle that I'm at. And then once you're done, we are going to be using the small brush for the next step. So again, this is just kind of, I'm in my fiddling stage, and then I will take out my small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to finish the little details on my lighthouse. So this is going to be the tower part at the top and any little windows that I want to put on it. I'm going to be using my small brush. The dominant colors I'm going to use are black and white, but if I decide to use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is just give myself a couple of little markers or small shapes for my windows. I've got my small brush. I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on my brush. I like to use it with a little bit of water as well. So I have black paint plus a little bit of water. I'm going to do just 3 slender vertical windows. You could certainly do as many as you want. And I'm going to put them off to the right a little bit. So really all I'm doing is just taking my brush and making these very slender kind of rectangle type of shapes. And I'm going to let it dry for a minute, and then I'll come back and do some details. You can make them different sizes if you wanted to. You could make them do whatever you want. It's your lighthouse. This lighthouse is not modeled after any real lighthouse that I've been to, so you can certainly have fun with making it into whatever you want. I'm going to do a third one, right, maybe down, maybe I'll make this one a little bit farther down. You can, you know, make yours, again, you could have 75 windows. You could put stripes on your lighthouse. You could do whatever you want. Oh, maybe stripes would have been easier if we did it before we did the wave, but so that's good in through there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same method with my black and a little bit of water to give myself a topper on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first just start with kind of cleaning up the top edge of it, and I'm going to give it a little bit of an arcing kind of a line that's going to overhang the edges of my top. So I'm going to start over here with just out maybe about 1/4 of an inch, give myself a little bit of an arcing line, and then back out here maybe about 1/4 of an inch. And again, mine's probably not super straight because I'm painting at an angle, but you could certainly make yours as straight or not straight as you'd like to. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself just these little side edges to here, so just up a little bit like that. And then I'm going to connect these with the top of this balcony kind of part, something like that. And again, I'm sure mine are not super duper straight, but we're gonna give it the illusion of being straight. And then I'm gonna give myself the part where the light is gonna go. So I'm gonna come in from here just a little bit. So maybe right about here and here, something like that. And then as I build this up, I'm thinking that I want this part to look like it is solid in through here. So I'm going to just kind of color this in with black paint. So this is like maybe the little building part where people, you know, go up into the light or something like that. And again, you can build yours whatever way that you would like to. It's your building. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of try and go straight up from here, and maybe right about in through here is where I'm going to have the tippy top of my topper. I'm going to do some decorative, maybe let's do a little kind of round top to it. Maybe a little bit wider than that. Little round top, and getting it to be kind of symmetrical is the game. But you again, maybe your lighthouse is leaning over a bit from, you know, all of the waves that have been crashing on it or something. I'm going to color this part in with black, and you can have yours as tall as you want. There's a million different ways that you can create the top of the lighthouse, so you just kind of pick one that works for you. I think I'm going to bring this down to here, and then this down to here, and then I'm going to add maybe some, I think I want my topper to be bigger. I'm going to make this come down just a little bit further. Feels a little tiny to me, so I'm going to just bring it, I'm going to use my creative license and just bring it down a little bit further and a little bit. There we go. Now it feels like it's properly proportioned. So we've got this kind of coming out these sides like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some little bars to, so my light can shine through. So maybe a little one here and a little one here. And again, black plus a little bit of water on my brush is going to give me my, my more slender lines. Maybe we're going to have a little line in between there. And then I'm going to put some lines going around this way. I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve just so it looks like it's going around the structure. And then I'm going to have a whole bunch of the little balcony kind of rails or these areas in through here. And then while that's drying, oh, maybe a little tiny topper up in through there. While that's drying, I'm going to go do a little bit of detail on my windows. So I'm going to be putting, I have black on my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of white. So I have black and white on my brush. And really, I'm just going to kind of give the illusion of maybe a little, well, I need a little bit more white than that. A little maybe lightness on the inside of those windows, or like a little pane of glass or something like that, just to give myself that little bit of light in the lighthouse. You could even put little, maybe a little frame around it if you wanted to, or anything that will help you to kind of structure those sides if you wanted to give it more detail or not, totally fine. And then up top, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a little bit of white paint. And really, I'm just going to kind of give myself some, the illusion of three-dimensional kind of stuff. So if I wanted these little rails to look like they're going across, or posts, I guess, I could just put a little white line next to them and then carry that little white line in through here, and that'll give me the ones that are in front of that other, the main structure of it. And then just these little tiny white lines, maybe we'll put a little highlight in through here with just a little bit of white. Same thing with here. I'll pull a little bit onto the roof of my structure, maybe a little bit in through here, and just give myself a little bit of a highlight up there to give myself the shape of it. And then just any little marks you want. You could even pull out a little streaks from, if the light was on inside, you could kind of give yourself a little bit of light in through there and just pull out these little streaks coming out in through there. It is daylight, so in our scene, so I don't know how much of that brightness from the light on the inside you'd see, but if you felt that you would see some, feel free to pull it out. And then you can make any little adjustments that you want. And then we are going to be using the same small brush for the next step. I think I feel like I want to put a little darkness here. And we're going to use the same brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going to sign this one. I'm going bottom right corner on this one, and I'm going to sign it with blue and brown. So I have blue and brown on my brush. I'm going to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with anything you'd like, your first name or the date or a symbol. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very lively water scene, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.